Okay, so let's get started. I'll just give you an overview of what I'm going to cover in this presentation. I'm going to cover the basics, so what you need to start from scratch to do high quality transfers of LPs to digital formats. And these are going to be high quality transfers, and I'll explain why that's important. I'll demonstrate the equipment by hooking it up as we go along. So this will be a step-by-step walkthrough. And then after some introductory comments about the equipment, then I'll conduct a live ripping session. And then while that's in progress, we can field some questions. Okay, so I'm going to disconnect so we can start. So to do this process, let me just say what the goals are here. Probably everybody's seen these ads for USB turntables. Get your records into your computer, get them onto CDs so you can listen to them. That's kind of a low quality approach, just because of the type of gear that's involved in the signal chain isn't really conducive to the type of quality sound that we're after here. We want to preserve all the information on the LP, and the goal here really is to make the transfer indistinguishable from the original analog playback. That's what we're after. So we're going to treat vinyl as a premium, high quality, high fidelity format, not just something that like an MP3. So we're after everything vinyl can offer. What's some of the reasons for doing this? I mean, you can buy reissues, digital reissues of old LPs and things nowadays online. That's not really a complete solution. I buy those downloads. They're really great. But 90% of the music, I would say, that's on vinyl will probably never see a reissue in a digital format. It might see a reissue in digital and in LP format. But then they're working from master tapes that have sat in a vault, sometimes not treated very well by age. And, really a better master for a lot of these recordings is an early pressing of the LP. And so I always try to seek those out. So I'm going to demonstrate this with some of this equipment here. I deliberately chose a budget price turntable just to show you the type of information it's possible to transfer from LP, even with a modestly priced turntable here. And I should shout out thanks to Roy and Leland from Music Hall for loaning this turntable. It's a Music Hall RMAF15, and I've changed the cartridge on it to a moving coil cartridge, because a moving coil cartridge does have a more extended high frequency response, and I'll use that in my presentation here as part of the demo. Just one thing, if you do that with this turntable, you have to replace the stamped steel platter with the acrylic one, or else you'll crash the cartridge, because the magnet in the moving coil cartridge will just get attracted like a vacuum cleaner, and there's your cartridge. Okay, so the type of, what do you need? Okay, so you need a computer, of course, and I'm going to be using an Apple Mac Mini here. You need an analog to digital converter. Most of you probably know that are familiar with computer audio, digital to analog converter, or DAC. This is the opposite direction. This is analog to digital converter, or ADC. There are tons of them out there on the market at all sorts of price ranges, and at any given price point, you really are at an optimum performance level. What you get at higher prices is better quality clocking in the device, lower noise circuitry, lower noise preamplifiers. The more expensive devices generally actually have fewer features in terms of the electronics, because most of the pro audio people that use these higher priced converters have particular requirements for those other pieces of the preamplifiers. So the higher end analog to digital converters are typically just line level input. The less expensive ones designed for home recording studios typically also have preamplifiers built into them. And those preamplifiers are really quite nice, again, given the price point. This is one example, and I don't hold this up as like the one that you should get. This is just an example. This is nice because I can put it in a carry-on bag, for flying around. This is an RME baby face. It has really nice quiet analog to digital converters, connects via USB. And so the USB cable provides power, and it also provides data transfer bidirectional. So from this device to the computer, and from the computer back to the device for playback. So I'll hook that up now with the USB cable. This is about $700. To get something decent, and I mean, you can really get spectacular results without spending a lot of money, starting around $300. There was a device called the TC Electronic Impact Twin, which was an entry-level device that I often recommended to people asking for something. That's been discontinued. My new favorite low-price device is made by Zoom. Zoom makes these handheld portable recorders, but now they've also branched out into making these home recording devices. It's called the Zoom TAC2, TAC-2. Sounds like a firearm, but it's actually a converter. And it connects via Thunderbolt, which is ideal for today's Mac computers that have Thunderbolt ports built in. So that allows you to use the other input data ports like the USB for other things. Okay, this particular device, rather than having audio connectors on the unit, uses this little breakout cable. That's unusual. Typically, they'll have connectors right on the device, like the Zoom. So I'll hook that up. Okay, now, one other thing is that these devices typically have Pro Audio style connectors on them. Balanced connectors. You'll rarely see RCA connectors on these type of devices. There are two types of inputs on this device. There's a low impedance input, or the microphone input. You can use that for moving coil cartridges, low output moving coil cartridges. These things will have 60 decibels of gain, and it's always adjustable, and that's an important thing. They also have instrument inputs. By instrument, they mean musical instrument like a guitar, which has a high output impedance. So this has a high input impedance. That works well for moving magnet cartridges, and again, adjustable gain. And these devices typically have both of those. So you need an adapter to go from an RCA to XLR balanced. And my company makes these to spec, and there's actually a coupon that you get if you get our Pure Vinyl software for $40 off. So these come out to be $35 a pair. These are custom wired to your spec. So for your cartridge, if you don't know what the load is, just contact us and we'll look it up and put the right load resistor inside this connector. And then you just hook up your conventional RCA leads to the adapter and then to the input of this interface. The microphone input, yeah. Those are the low impedance inputs. You can't use them for moving magnet because a moving magnet wants 47K load resistance. These are typically about 600 ohms or 1,000 ohms. That won't work. But moving magnet, and they're always quiet enough for that. That's correct, yeah. Okay. Okay, so now that it's hooked up, there's a little patch panel here that you can ignore when you hook it up.
That device comes with all the software?
No, well, it comes with some software for mixing and stuff for home recording, but we're not going to use that. The software that I'm going to be using for this demo is made by my company. It's called Pure Vinyl. There are other software packages out there that you can use for recording that are free, like something called Audacity. It's a freeware software package. But from conversations with people that want to do this sort of thing, they find it a little too complicated and too hard to use because it's more designed for multi-track home recording. So the editing operations are a little more complicated. This was designed from the ground up for this purpose. And we first described this, or just demonstrated this at Rocky Mountain Audio Fest in 2006. So we're on version 4 now. That was version 1. So this is our 10th time at this show. I saw a hand up there, but can you hold it and then until I start the recording? Okay. Okay, so there's one other thing that you need, and that's a hard drive. And the important thing is to try to use a hard drive with a data connection that's different than the data connection used for your audio device. This is a USB, so you would probably want to use Thunderbolt or FireWire if your computer has it, or a network-attached storage which connects via Ethernet. If you have a Thunderbolt audio interface, then pretty much you can use any other type of connection for the hard drive storage. Okay. Some of the parameters that come into play when you're doing this are things like sample rate. And if you go out to some of the internet forums, you'll see people saying, well, gee, there's no reason to really use higher than 44.1 kilohertz because nobody can hear higher than 20 kilohertz anyways, or almost nobody can hear higher than that. And I'm going to demonstrate that it's with our goal in mind of trying to capture all the information on the vinyl record. We want to use the highest sample rate that we can. And I'll show you that, the reason. Okay, so I'm going to launch a spectrum analyzer so we can look at the frequency, analyze the frequency content of the audio. And the spectrum analyzer is another product made by my company. It's called Mac the Scope. And actually, we are working on an upgrade that's compatible with the latest Macs, but this is running on an older Mac. So if you tried to go out and find this, you'd need an older Mac to run it right now. Okay, so okay. By the way, what I'm using here is I got a laptop computer that I'm using for the remote control for the Mac Mini. It's using Apple's built-in screen sharing. So I've got my own version of that screen on this laptop. And that's actually what we're doing up in the exhibit room as well. So you can basically connect this with Wi-Fi and walk all around the house while you're doing this recording. So you start the recording and just take your laptop with you and you can monitor the progress from there. Okay. in there. It's not like a digital filter, a brick wall filter for digital audio where you actually do not have anything above the cutoff frequency, but this is preserved. Anyways, this is a reissue of a 1960 recording, so digital technology finally catches up with 1960. Okay, so that's one parameter, is the sample rate, and I hope I convinced you that it's worthwhile to use the highest sample rate possible. You can't hear that high, but you capture more of the information from the LP. The other thing that's important is that you capture timing information, and there's more and more evidence to support the notion that timing information that's preserved by high sample rates does add to the realism of the reproduction of the sound. Even though you can't hear it, it does preserve more of the timing information, because a filter roll-off does add a phase shift and make it sound less natural to our evolved systems of hearing. I'll get your question in just a second. Okay. All right. The other parameter is resolution, bit depth. Again, you'll see people on the internet saying, well, LPs only have a dynamic range of 60 dB, or 70 dB. Why would you want to use higher than 16-bit, which more than encompasses that dynamic range? 16-bit audio has a dynamic range, 96 decibels. The reason is not the dynamic range, it's the resolution and the precision of capturing each sample and getting the amplitude exactly right. The steps are smaller. And we don't really care anymore about having bigger files because we have adequate hard drive storage nowadays. Sorry? 24-bit, yeah.
For example, a 32-bit file size versus a 192 32-bit file size versus a 96 16-bit or 24-bit.
Yeah.
I mean, if we wanted to save some space, what kind of disk space would we?
Oh, okay. Well, typically a single album, uncompressed, flat PCM will be about 2 gigabytes or so. Okay. You can use lossless compression, which I advocate, to reduce the size about 30%, 30 to 50%. FLAC or Apple lossless, which are the same format, just in a different wrapper. Yeah, yeah, they're exactly the same. It's 96 kilohertz right up here. 96. This is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And this is just some garbage that's picking up in the room somewhere here. This is not an ideal setup. The ideal setup for a moving coil cartridge would be to use a balanced, not like a conventional shielded, but a twisted pair with a shield. You get noise pickup immunity, common mode noise rejection, and lower noise. It's really the hot setup. But you can use these adapters as well with good results. Okay, so 2 important parameters, sample rate and resolution. And again, easily accomplished with today's inexpensive gear. About 15 years ago, when the first affordable 192 kilohertz analog to digital converter was available, that was about $1,500. It was a card that plugged into your PC, and that was line level input, so you still needed a preamplifier. Okay. So now I'm going to start ripping an album, and then we'll be able to field some questions.
So, have you seen much difference between some of the reissues versus the originals?
Tons in some cases. I have a friend that has some, like for instance, there's the Jimi Hendrix reissues that they've been doing on and on and on and on. And until last night, I had not heard any that were decent. And actually this one, it was on a CD. It was a Japanese reissue CD of Electric Ladyland. It's awesome. It's really awesome. But the LP re-releases, we had some of the original pressings that we had, the British and the American with the different content. One was mono, one was stereo. And then we put on the reissue, and it was like 10 seconds, and that's it, you know. Not listenable, but not listenable. And probably because they had to do some EQ touch-up in the remastering to compensate maybe for some of the degradation of the master tape, yeah.
Is the cartridge picking up this noise or the unit itself?
No, it's this cable, yeah. Yeah. And actually, this level, it's a very sensitive analyzer. This is 80 dB down. So you would never hear that anyways. But it bothers me, and I wouldn't consider that acceptable. So, but for this demo, it's okay. There's all kinds of noise around here. All right. This software is called Pure Vinyl. My company makes it. It's on version 4 now. We're working on version 5. It goes for $299, and it was designed from the ground up for this particular purpose. And it has lots of really cool features that make this task really easy. In fact, you can walk away, come back a week later, and there's really no learning curve at that point. You just put on an LP and just follow these steps. It's really easy. So what you do, just type in the artist name and album name. And then there's a trigger level feature where, and you only have to set this once, and I'll explain why. And you just set this so that it's a little bit higher than the background level. And now we can hit record, and it's going to wait until I drop the stylus. So you can take your time. It's not like the old days of one hand on the cassette record button and one hand on the stylus, and then having to do it over and over again, right? This does that for you. Okay, so now it's recording. I'll bring the levels up a little bit. So it's recording. It tells you the amount of storage space you have. Obviously, I'm recording right to the internal hard drive on the computer. Not something I would recommend. If the power is interrupted on one of these devices at the wrong time when it's going through a write operation, you can lose the whole array. So you want to keep it backed up, and you want to use uninterruptible power source. And there's an example of an external bus power drive, but I wouldn't really recommend these because they're really, really slow. It'll make the work frustrating. But you can get wall wart power drives that are really fast, connect via Thunderbolt or USB 3, which are ideal for this purpose. Okay, and then let's see. I had a slide here for the RIAA, but basically, when LPs are manufactured, it's not just a matter of simply dumping the audio onto the master lacquer and then creating the LPs from that. There's an equalization curve that's applied that boosts the treble and cuts the bass. The treble boost is designed to improve the signal-to-noise ratio, because when the LP is played back, you apply a treble cut, which flattens that out. Likewise, you apply a bass boost. The reason for the bass cut in the manufacturing process is it allows the grooves to be located closer together on the LP surface to put more information on the record. Now, that's normally done in a phono stage. Every phono stage that's manufactured, just about everyone except ours, has an RIAA circuit built in that applies this special EQ curve that was standardized in 1955. That's why it's called RIAA, because they were the standards. They became the standards body that said everybody's going to use this curve from now on. Before that, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of different curves. Rather than do that in the preamp, and ties into your question, is obviously this device is made for home recording. It doesn't have the RIAA curve built in. So where does it come from? It comes from our software. And this is one of the great advantages of using this type of software for recording LPs. If your goal is to transfer LPs to high-resolution digital formats, then having the RIAA curve also in the digital domain is advantageous. The biggest benefit is, besides the fact that the channels match exactly, the curve response matches is exactly as you want to the RIAA standard curve. But because it's a low-pass filter, it actually trades time resolution for amplitude resolution. The net effect is that you gain about 2 bits or 12 decibels of headroom, dynamic range, in the recording process. Why is that important? Because you've already got 24 bits of audio. The reason it's important is that when you set your input levels, you don't have to be really obsessive like in the old days of cassettes, where you want to squeeze out the maximum amount of signal-to-noise ratio. You can get this just up to about -10, and those extra 2 bits in the RIAA curve come into play, 12 dB. So as long as you're within this window, you have the optimum signal-to-noise ratio. You don't have to preview the levels on the entire disc to do the recording. You just sample a really loudly recorded disc, and then you set your input levels using the control panel that comes with these devices, and then you just forget about it. If you encounter another LP that has less hot modulation levels, it doesn't matter, because the dynamic range is going to be constrained by that anyways, even if you only come up to about -16. This is a really cool feature and really an advantage of doing it this way. The other reasons it's an advantage is that we have a built-in adjustable rumble filter. So you can adjust the rumble filter slope and frequency here. I have it set to 22 Hertz, but this setting gets saved with every recording, so you can tailor this to the quality of the LP pressing that you have. So if you have lots of low frequency noise on the recording, or there's not much effective low frequency content, then you can raise this to a higher frequency and improve your headroom and get higher recording levels. And so you can always change this later on. You know, some of you are probably thinking, red laser pointer, wow, how quaint. Well, I'll have you know that a red laser pointer is to laser pointers what LPs are to digital. So, okay, so there's one more track here to go. Any other questions at this point? Yes?
Just for clarity then, I'm just following on that last question. So coming out of the turntable, you have a small preamp.
Yes.
But no RIAA in that preamp.
That's correct.
What kind of a device is that?
That's one of these devices that I was explaining earlier, these made for home recordings. There are tons of them out there, tons of different ones. Yeah, that's right. And they typically have built-in preamps that are suitable for this purpose. They're quiet and they're really great. You know? So whatever price point you want to go to, you're going to get spectacular results. The higher end approach is to get a better quality analog to digital and digital to analog converter and then use an outboard phono stage. My company makes several of these that have the RIAA curve omitted. You can order it with the RIAA circuit built inside for extra cost if you want to use it as a standalone phono stage. And to my knowledge, you know, we're the only company that makes one that you can get this flat output. Yes? Yeah, you know, it's really unlikely that we're ever going to do a Windows version. The reason is, you know, our support, we hear from like 2% of our customers with issues, and most of those times it's either my activation code isn't working because they didn't type it in right, or else it's a Mac-related issue that we help them with. And so what would happen on Windows is we'd have to become Windows experts, and we're not. You know, we want to focus on our strengths. But most people, we do have plenty of customers that are Windows-based, and they buy a Mac Mini like this for $699 and consider it a component of their system. This is really, it looks nice on the shelf, you know. It doesn't look like a PC. It looks nice and it fits in. So that's about all I can offer on that. Yes?
Sir, can you use this mic, please?
It's probably a very simple question, but while recording, is there a good way to take out the little nicks and pops that happen?
You can do that post, and I'll explain the best ways to do that. But basically, the software does have some very basic surgical pop and click removal that is done manually, and there are tools in here that let you find the pops and clicks and cut them out. This is mainly designed for pristine recordings that'll have a few little physical defects, and you can eliminate those pretty easily. For more comprehensive restoration purposes, there's third-party software. One that our users like to use a lot is called Click Repair. It's about $50. It's automated. It takes out a lot of stuff, and we get calls saying that people are delighted with it. And then maybe a couple weeks later, some of those people will call back and say, I think I'd rather live with the noise because it's removing some of the music too. So, you know, my suggestion would be go to Discogs or something. Try to find, if you have a record that you really love, try to find a cleaner pressing, you know, and it'll save you lots of time, and the end result will be better. Other questions? Yeah.
I use iTunes from my music library and Pure Vinyl moving into the iTunes.
Yeah, the question is, how well does Pure Vinyl integrate with iTunes? And the answer is very well, and I'll demonstrate that. It's automatic. Okay. All right, this is almost finished. So when you get to the end of this, for the tracks are going to be separated. Yeah, I'll show you how that works. It's semi-automatic. Now, on a CD, of course, it's really simple because it just calls up CDDB or, you know, Grace Note or something, and it figures out the names of the tracks based upon the sequencing and the exact duration of the tracks. We don't have that luxury with LPs because the track durations rarely match that closely. There'll be a few seconds off because even if you set the speed of your turntable exactly, it's still going to drift a little bit. And also, oftentimes, the CD releases of LPs have different track sequences or different tracks. And so looking up that information automatically is problematic. But I'll say something else about that in a second. So what we do is we have a semi-automated track locator, and I'll show how that works. Okay, so we're done with side one. or most of it anyways. I didn't record the whole thing. And we'll flip over the record, and you notice that it says this slowly comes down, and there's actually a time constant built into there to to help facilitate not getting false stylus lift detection. So this will slowly come down, and then it'll say stylus lift detected right here. Okay, now it's ignoring the audio, and it's actually even muted it, so you can clean the stylus and it doesn't come over the speakers. And then when you're ready, you just flip the record over, clean it, whatever you want to do, and then you say click when ready to continue recording, and now it's listening for audio. Okay, now it's recording. And there's an adjustable delay between when it detects the stylus lift and when it starts recording, so it doesn't record that first transient when you drop the stylus. It waits for half a second, or about half a revolution. Any other questions? Yes?
To be clear, this analog converter that you're using up there,
Yes.
it's an RME,
RME, yeah, it's called the baby face, yeah.
and it has a preamp in it, line level preamp,
Yeah.
not the RIAA equalization.
Correct. The inputs are configurable to line level input. So if you really want, you can use your own phonostage, but you'll have the ability here to connect the turntable directly and do your own comparison. And I've never heard of anybody going back to their phonostage. So then you can switch it to have the inputs connected to the microphone preamps with adjustable gain. And that's all in a control panel that comes with this unit. It's really easy to use, and you only have to do it once. And then there's a instrument preamp, which is designed, which you can use for moving magnet type cartridges. Instrument or high impedance. Instrument meaning like electrical musical instrument, like a guitar, that type of instrument, which has a high output impedance. Okay, so that input impedance, or those instrument inputs, is about 1 megohm. And then you just, again, get another set of these adapters if you have a moving magnet cartridge that loads it with 47K and has a capacitor built in. Does that address your question? Uh-huh. Yeah, we make adapters for moving coil and moving magnet cartridges. You specify the load, or if you don't know, we'll look it up for you. And the moving magnet also includes a built-in capacitor, load capacitor, which is part of the cartridge load that you require. Okay, so that's the only other hurdle obstacle that is here, and it's a really minor minor one.
So this is those adapters are your name?
That's right.
It doesn't come with the order?
No, it doesn't.
How much are those?
We have a discount, a $40 discount if you get a license to our software, $35 a pair for these type of adapters. And we also make adapters. If you have like a VPI turntable that has a connection block on the back where you can remove the interconnect, we also make balanced shielded twisted pair for lower noise that go directly from the turntable all the way to this input device. And those with a discount are $59 a pair. We use high quality Canary Star Quad, is what's called Star Quad, which is another iteration above shielded twisted pair. It gives you even better common mode noise rejection. So that's what we use in the adapters.
And so what I'm getting out of this is I could eventually just get rid of my preamp.
Yeah, exactly. There's a user of ours that's been a user for a number of years. This man in Switzerland, Christian, named Christian, and he's such a vinyl enthusiast. He has 20 phonostages, 20 different phonostages in his quest for perfection. And then he got pure vinyl, and he got an audio interface, and he's using that for the last 4 or 5 years. So, yeah. He's really sold, and everybody is really once they hear it. You know.
Better than Macintosh?
Sorry?
Better than Macintosh?
Better than
Macintosh, the audio.
Well, I don't know why a particular brand comes into it. I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, there's tons of different phonostages out there. So, Okay, so what I'm going to do now is go to the next step, which is the editing. So I'll lift the stylus. Let me see if we get to the end of this track. Oh, that's good enough. And then same thing's going to happen. It's going to say stylus lift detected. And then the next step is really pretty cool if you haven't seen it before. And we demonstrate this stuff up in our exhibit room. We're in room 490 in the hotel here, in the tower right up here. Not the tower, but the atrium, room 490. So we have a more premium type of vinyl transfer setup in our room. I'm just using this because I want to show you something that's really easy and entry level and easy to use. Okay, so now what we do is say open in pure vinyl and click stop recording. And what it does is it takes the audio in the recording and creates a vinyl cue guide image that we'll use when we locate the tracks and split them out. Now, getting back to this question of naming the tracks, etc. There's a new device up in our exhibit room by this company, new company called Sweet Vinyl, and they call it the Sugar Cube. And what it does, it's kind of like Spotify for LPs. You feed some of the audio from, you just Y connect or whatever, or the output of your DAC when you're making the recording. It goes out to the internet and it looks up the album track names. And it's a little bit more sophisticated than Spotify because Spotify gives you track names and artists out of context. This gives you the whole album and the whole list of tracks and populates this. That's going to be the ultimate expression of that product. And we have an alpha version up in the room. And actually, I'm really impressed because I was throwing all sorts of obscure stuff at it, and it was finding it. Stuff that I bought 40 years ago, I said, you're not going to get this, and pops right up. It's really cool. And then, have this laptop up in front and start playing something, and it's just a Wi-Fi connection, and it shows the track names. It's really, really pretty slick. Okay, so.
Question, what about tracks that kind of blend into each other?
That's a little trickier, and this automatic track locator, you would have to do that manually, but that's not so bad either. I'll show you how that's done. 90% of the albums that I record, and most people record, I think, will have clean breaks in between. So I turn this on, and there's two buttons up here in the editor, Snap to and Add Split. Add Split means I want to split this up into tracks. Snap to means let's try and find the track intros automatically. And if you think about it, splitting up tracks on an LP is a little bit more tricky than in a digital recording because a digital recording fades to black in between the tracks. There's no sound, so all you have to do is look for 0 and then look for the first non-zero bit and you find the track intro. Vinyl doesn't have that luxury because it never really goes down to digital black. So we have to do some calculations on the audio to try and filter out impulse noises and look for something that looks really like music. And I'll show you that this does work pretty successfully. So what you do is you click close to the track boundary, and then it moves and locks in. And you can tell the success of this operation because the waveform display goes flat like that. So then I say split track, and then type in the track name. And I don't really have a problem with this because you can actually preload the track names and it reads them from a list. I didn't do that in this operation, but you just type this in and then click OK. And then the same thing with all the remainder of the tracks. I'm just going to skip typing in the track names.
What was that, the automatic one, Sweet Vinyl? You said something else?
Yeah, they call it the Sugar Cube. And it's just basically an alpha level product that they have. They're demonstrating in our exhibit room. It's just a little self-contained little Linux PC in a little Sugar Cube-like box, and it has an internet connection and does the calculations on the audio and figures out what the tracks are. All right, so side 2, we didn't really record more than one track, so you just see one big band here. This is what you get if you recorded, like a 12-inch single or something like that. So then we click save the tracks, and then go back to the editor. And so I'll click on the first real track name in the track list, and the stylus jumps to that position, and then I'll hit play, and you'll see that we just nail the intro very well. And then next track, just click on the tracks in the list and it'll jump to that location. Yeah, this is reading from the master digital file. Now, the workflow here is that we record a master file which contains both sides of the album, or if you have a multi-disc set, you just keep going and you get a big file. It splits it up into sides based upon when you detect the stylus lift. And then the next step after you assign the track locations is that you click render, and you're presented with a number of different options. The two main options are render as track files or render as iTunes bookmarks. These are two very different things. Track files would be what you would normally expect. It would split out these individual tracks and create physical, separate audio files, and also incorporate the RIAA curve. So this would be something if you wanted to copy these tracks to your portable device or put them on CDs or something like that, or where you didn't need to have special software to play them back. These are just plain vanilla audio tracks. The other option is iTunes bookmarks, and what that does is this is part of the integration with iTunes that ties into your question before. It creates bookmark tracks that go into the iTunes library that appear just like any regular tracks. It indicates the sample rate, 192 kilohertz, and they look just like regular tracks that you can use in playlists, you can use for shuffle play, whatever. When you go to play one of those tracks with pure vinyl running or pure music, which is just our player application, it interprets that as one of these bookmark tracks, goes to the main recording, and then plays that back with the RIAA curve. Any settings that you made in the preferences, such as the rumble filter, you can always change that. That will automatically be incorporated because it goes out and reads the metadata for the file. The bookmark itself doesn't change. So that's a nice feature. So I'll demonstrate the track files. There's two steps. Number one is you click Preview Output Levels, and this very quickly scans through the tracks, the individual tracks that you've created, and determines the maximum signal level of the recording. And then it gives you a number in this box, which will pop up in a second, where how much gain, extra gain, it will have to apply. Now, usually, after you made a digital recording, changing the gain of the recording is usually a no-no, because you're only going to introduce distortion. You're just shifting levels, and the only time you don't introduce distortion is if you do level shifting by exactly 1 bit, which is pretty coarse and not very useful. But in this case, we have a special case because we have the advantage of the RIAA curve in the digital domain. And you remember I said we have an extra 2 bits or 12 dB of dynamic range. So if we add 6 dB of gain, it's within that window and we don't care. And it's going to preserve all the information in the recording. All the internal calculations are done with 64 bits of precision. So there's no distortion added to the recording during this process. And of course, because we're doing the RIAA curve in the digital domain, that operation in itself is distortion free. Yes?
Is this how you do normalization across tracks?
Exactly, yeah. Now there's a setting here where you can have it normalized per track. In other words, it records the level of each track and normalizes each track to maximum. If you want to keep something together as an album, you wouldn't normally do that because you want the individual track sequence and levels to be preserved. But if you're just doing it for demos and you want to have individual tracks, then you would do it per track. There's another really special option in here. This gets really into esoterics, where we normalize not according to peak levels, but according to perceived loudness. This uses a broadcast standard LKFS loudness estimator. My company makes another product called Audio Leak that's used in broadcast stations all over the world. And it does this measurement, and basically it's the result of panel testing on a series of recordings where they have tuned the measurement software so that the measurement of the loudness agrees with the panel's perceived loudness. This thing is poison to the loudness wars, because we normalize according to perceived loudness. There's no further incentive to boost the overall compression of the recording and make them loud, because the peak to average ratio starts to drop. But the LKFS level is related to the average. So when you do the loudness compression, they have to play them back more quietly. It's a great paradox. So this is going to kill the loudness wars. But anyways, if you're interested in making comparisons of equipment, different cartridges, that sort of thing, you will want to use this feature, because all the tracks will not have the same peak levels, but they'll have the same perceived loudness. If you normalize the peak level, you are going to disadvantage the better equipment that does preserve dynamics better, because they're going to have higher peaks. But then if you have less capable equipment that doesn't preserve the dynamics, you're going to boost the levels up. It's going to sound better even when it isn't. So this is kind of a nifty thing. I've been trying to get Fremer to convince him to do this, and he's finally starting to see the light of using this type of thing. In his, he has those files that okay, I got 5 minutes. Files that he puts on his website. Okay, so I'll show you the other thing. Basically then at this point you just click render tracks. Okay, so we're going to go iTunes bookmarks. We don't need to pre-calculate the normalization levels because we're just going right into the recording, and we can adjust the playback level anytime we want. Never. This is non-destructive. So we never. Yeah, that's right. We never touch the original file at that point. Okay, so these are the tracks that I just rendered, and they appear in iTunes. This is the first one that I named here. And so these are the bookmark tracks. So now we're in iTunes, and I hit play, and it loads that in. And it crashes, which doesn't happen very often, but let's see. Let's go back here. If you don't believe me, there's a free demo available on our website that you can download, and you can try it out for yourself, and you'll see that it doesn't crash. So let's go back and do that again. Oh, I got to turn the volume up.
It's not enough, but then again,
Okay, and then
it's
I can
more
skip to
than
the
what I
next track.
had.
Okay, so that's how that works. Oh, I didn't show you one other really cool thing, and it'll only take a second. Okay, the automatic track locator. While you're making the recording, and I didn't show you this, but there's a button that you can click. You can type in the track names in advance. If you have also the approximate track durations, you put those in. Then when it goes to create the LP, it looks at that list, and it uses that as sort of a fuzzy logic to position the automatic track locator that you would normally do manually. So I'll show you that. We will delete the tracks, and then what it'll do is it'll go and load in that list that I typed in while I was making the recording, and now it's splitting the tracks automatically, see? And so this is a great time saver. And then I'll show you that it nails these too. Yes? Yeah, I didn't have enough time to really show you, but there's tools in here, and basically what it does is it scans through the entire recording and does some heuristic analysis on things that look like pops and clicks, and it puts them in a list and it prioritizes them so you can get down through the list. And with a little practice looking at the waveform, it's easy to tell the difference between a pop and click and something that looks like a musical transient. And very quickly, you can go through and locate these individual pops and clicks and cut them out. So now we've put those in. So let's see. I'll flip over. This is something I played in the room last night for Michael Livornia, and he loved it, but it cleaned out the room. Oh, that's the Gary Lewis. Let me close that. Really, you have to believe me, this never happens. You have to believe me. Okay, so let's just go back. Okay, so it didn't remember the last one I loaded in. So I'll just go back and load in the Pixies again. Okay, so we'll go to the editor. All right, so then I'll just start that track. Oh, yes. Any other questions? Thank you very much. You've been a great audience, really great questions, and attentive. All right, thanks.